Welcome to the ASQ Podcast, where personal transformation and conscious leadership meet. In this powerful episode of the ASQ Podcast, we're joined by Eric Rogell, two-time best-selling author and transformational speaker. In his latest book, Lions Raises Lambs, Eric asks a bold and important question. What does it take to reclaim your power and lead your life with courage, clarity, and conviction? If you're ready to awaken the leader within and live with deeper purpose, it's time to reclaim your Lionheart. Stay tuned.
Well, hello and everybody for joining us. Eric, how are you, man?
I'm great, man. I appreciate the invitation to be here today.
Absolutely, man. It's I've been looking forward to this. You know, I've been looking forward to this for a while now, right?
Yeah, I said you've been threatening to have me on for months.
For months now, right? And I want to kind of like talk about the story of how we met, because it was like an instant type of connection, right? We met at a local event, More Than a Game, hosted by Children's Services Council locally, and we started talking right away about archetypes. And I get overly excited when people start talking about archetypes, and then we started talking about the hero's journey, and I'm like, whoa, So I just thought that it was beautiful how you presented it, and the knowledge and the practicality of it. So I was really looking forward to meeting you and bringing you into the podcast and listening to what you have to say, and listening to that. So thank you for being here.
Well, again, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about it because, this is a passion of mine. So, and I know it's a passion of yours.
Yeah.
So I think hopefully the listeners are going to find something in it that'll make them passionate about it. So, I'm dying to jump in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I changed the question about the call to the adventure into this question, right? And I ask everyone this question when they come on the podcast. Where were you pitched?
I'm only laughing because you had to tell me before we got on what that really meant. So now I get it, and I can say. So I was born and raised in New York, right outside New York City, just over the Bronx border. I know you're familiar with the area.
Mm-hmm.
You were raised in that area yourself. From the age of 12, I was raised by a single mom.
Okay.
And I always joke around that mom raised me to be like a veal. Right. I had to be very soft and tender. I couldn't get bumped or bruised. So I was mostly like an indoor boy. She raised me to sit quietly in a corner and read and draw and, not be outside in the streets with my friends running around playing tackle football on the concrete and, all the other stuff that, stick ball and all the things that we did. So, I would look out the window and watch these guys play while I was reading comic books and science fiction books and drawing and doing all of that. So, that was pretty much my upbringing until I got into my teens. Hormones started coming into play. I started to grow and get bigger and realized something's not right here. I'm not really supposed to be this quiet, sitting all the time. Like there's something inside of me that's roiling and starting to get going. And, mom got to be very afraid of it. Like I would either not lash out at her. I never threatened her, but I would be like, when things are getting, no, don't do that. Don't, you got to stay really calm. Don't get angry. Don't ever get angry. And again, this really felt wrong to me. But, I'll tell you, and I don't know if this is jumping ahead in your questioning, but it comes up here. But, I get asked a lot when I tell that story about, mom and her raising me, and dad wasn't, they divorced. It wasn't like he had passed away. He was there, but he wasn't as available. And he did what a lot of dads do in divorce was he wanted to be buddy during the times they had us. He wasn't a disciplinarian at that point. He didn't want to have to take that on. So mom was both. She was mom and she was dad, the disciplinarian. And then we had this buddy that we saw every couple of weeks, for the weekend. So, he was around, but he didn't really want to discipline. So this was mostly mom. But I get asked the question a lot. You must really hate your mom. You must really hate your dad. And the answer to that is, yeah, Omar, I hated them for a really long time. I blamed my mom for everything. I blamed my dad for everything. I call it taking out my blame thrower and just
Destroying everything.
burning everybody to the ground, right? It
Hmm.
was all their fault.
Yep.
And what I came to realize, and as we talk about the hero's journey and the archetypes and all of that, and I'll explain to you how I got there when we get into
Hmm.
that part, but I did realize that it was all perfect.
Mm.
Mom did the best that she could with the
Hmm.
tools that she had at the time,
Yeah.
right? She didn't have some of the tools that we have now. And she was, my dad had left her. So she was left fearful and anxious and
Mhm.
alone and insecure and all of those things. She was passing that on to me.
Yeah.
She was imprinting that on me. And like I said, fortunately, I was pushing out against that and rebelling it. I found
Hmm.
some great mentors who will talk about that. But I don't blame mom, because if she had done it any differently, I wouldn't be sitting here with you having this conversation right now.
Correct.
I
Correct.
would be a completely different guy, and
Hmm.
it would be a whole different conversation. So
Yeah.
I would say that mom was perfect. And, you know, in my world, I chose my mom and dad,
Hmm.
came down here together. We had this soul agreement. We came down here together. She played that role for me. My dad
Correct.
played that role for me, and it made
Yeah.
me who I am. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, right? Because again, you and I connect, right? Sometimes we're doing presentations, and I look at you, and you look at me, and we're like, "Oh, come on, Eric, don't steal my thunder." Oh my God, right? So, but this is beautiful, right? Because this is the end result of really going through your journey, right? Going through your quest to, because there's a lot of things that you said in there that I want to touch on, right? So,
Sure.
so the first thing is that most people, when we don't reflect, or we don't have the right mentors, or or broaden our perspective, we hold on to the anger and resentment towards our parents,
Hmm.
right? Because we feel as if, we have the tendency to compare, what other people have, or what other people, and what I'm in thinking about what we're missing. But it's beautiful to hear that you don't have that resentment for them. How did you arrive at that conclusion, and what did it take to arrive at that conclusion? Because a lot of people get stuck on that part, on parents and the
Hmm.
trauma that they caused. I mean, this is kind of like the word right now, traumatic experiences from our parents, and we're stuck
Wounds,
there.
right? The wounds, right? We were
Yes,
wounded.
the wounds.
That's the
Hmm.
big thing I hear from men.
Hmm.
That seems to be the big phrase, catchphrase, or whatever, is we were wounded by our fathers.
Correct.
And I get that. And listen, we talk about the hero's journey, that descent that we talk
Hmm.
about. We look at it a lot of times. The hero in a lot of these journeys are orphaned, they're
Yes.
fatherless, or whatever it is. And that, I get that. It's for a reason. It's because you want to show that this young man is on his own journey, right?
Hmm.
So for me, where I really started uh, to let go, and then fully let go, was I have a mentor. Man's name is Rob James. I
Hmm.
found him. Found his work. So he founded this work called Self Discovery Life Mastery. I was introduced to it probably about 10, 12 years ago. And Rob's the founder of it. He's been doing this kind of work for over 30 years. His mentor, because he has a mentor also, and hopefully we'll talk about, it's my intention to talk about the power of mentoring and why it's so
Correct.
important. And it
Hmm.
isn't the hero's journey, it's a big part of the hero's journey. But he became my mentor. He's been doing it 30. He has a mentor who's been doing it, I think, over 60 years, this
Hmm.
kind of work. And Rob is actually the co-author of Lions Raised as Lambs, my latest book, and it is our journey.
Hmm.
So it is about us finding each other and him becoming my mentor. And one of the things that he preaches, and it is brilliant, is ownership and personal responsibility. And part of that is dropping the blame on our parents,
Hmm.
because they did exactly what we wanted them to do, right? What our soul agreement was. And it becomes, personal responsibility is inner referral
Hmm.
versus blaming others, which is outer referral, whatever's out there.
Yeah.
So if I were to blame my parents and say they're the cause, then I'm giving them all the power.
Mm.
I'm denying my own power,
Hmm.
right? But when I look at it and say, well, I created the situation. I probably had an agreement with them. I lived the life that I lived because this is the journey I wanted to take.
Hmm.
These are the things I needed to learn. Now I'm taking personal responsibility. I have my power back.
Yes.
Now I can move forward, because when we put things on other people out there, and this is one of the key things I learned from Rob, is when you do that, you give them your power. You have no power left. So it's
Hmm.
completely up to them.
Yeah.
So, Omar, I would ask you, how do you want to live your life? Do you want to live your life independent, solely responsible for everything that goes on with
Mhm.
your own power? Or do you want to just give that to other people and let them decide what happens to you?
So let me ask you this, right? Because we work around the same field. And we work with a lot of men and a lot of different people, but there is a movement in our society into to to focus primarily on blaming others, right?
Mhm.
And so that there's a lot of people saying out there, well, they caused me so much pain. Oh, society said that I have to get retribution from them. They destroyed my life. What do you say to those people that are so caught up on this idea
Yeah,
of everything from the outside, because it is something that is being deeply ingrained with our kids right now.
sure.
That part of not being responsible for our own souls
Right.
and our own journeys.
Yeah.
So what do you say to that? Because this is a again, we talk about life,
Hmm.
leadership, and culture, right? Because you can't have those three components in isolation. We interact with one another,
Right.
but there is a trend
Mhm.
of not taking responsibility for our life. So what do you have to say about that in the context of what you've learned?
Yeah, it's very, very simple, Omar. Very simple. And I say this to the guys that I work with, and it is stop being a victim.
Mm.
When, in our society right now, the sad thing is we honor the victim. We make a hero of the victim. We want to coddle them and say, I'm very sorry. And, oh my God, look what happened to you. And you need retribution. They have to do. When you become the victim, you create two things. One, yourself as a victim, and them out there as the victimizer.
Hmm.
So you have victim, victimizer, and now there's this tug of war. I blame you, but you're defending yourself, and now we're going like this, and it's this big tug of war. And you owe me. I'm the victim. You owe me. Society
Hmm.
owes me. The courts owe me. Whatever. Whoever owes me. See how that starts to spiral down?
Hmm.
And that's where we are right now. And
Yep.
and what I see in a lot of these young men is apathy,
Yep.
and they're resigned. They just gave
Hmm.
up.
Hmm.
They're like, well, society tells me that masculinity is toxic and that I should hide my masculinity and I can't be my true self and who I am. And I don't know how to do that. And so they did all this to me. And now I'm a victim.
Hmm.
Stop being a victim. The first thing that happens when you stop being a victim and you stop blaming them is you take your power back.
Hmm.
Right. And I tell young men, and I tell whoever will listen, look, masculinity is not toxic. I'm going to say it again. Masculinity is not toxic. It is misunderstood,
Yes.
misused,
Hmm.
and mistaught.
Yes. That
Okay.
I agree with completely,
So
100%.
we have these young men who didn't have good mentors that taught them. Good men who understand their masculinity and using it in a positive way, because
Hmm.
healthy masculinity, positive masculinity, what we call in my work right order masculinity, which is where you use it for good and you use it to better yourself and others, is one of the most beautiful things
Yep.
on the planet. That connected to your heart, you're unstoppable,
Yeah.
right? So what I say to them is stop being a victim, because when you're a victim, you can't get to that
Hmm.
healthy masculinity, right order masculinity. You can't. You're stuck in the victim, and
Yeah.
it keeps you down here and pointing out there, and it keeps you helpless. Stop being a victim. Get on your own personal responsibility.
Hmm.
Take your power back, and now you can do something about it. So to me, that's what I believe society should be doing. And
Yeah.
fortunately, there are men like you, men like me, men like Rob, men like, some of the other men that I work with that understand this, and they're out there helping these young men and
Hmm.
guiding them, keeping them on the path so that they can become
Hmm.
healthy, masculine, right order leaders,
Correct.
kings. of their own, kingdoms. And I call it generational impact when
Yes.
your sons and daughters see you as that masculine, that healthy masculine, that right order masculine. They then go, that's what I want, not this victim nonsense down here
Hmm.
where, wallowing and giving up and all of that. I want this. I want
Yeah.
to become that. And that's the key.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, right? Because that's the end game, right? We
Right.
want all our men to get to that end game, right? And then the road to that, and in the hero's journey, you touched a little bit about the mentors. So we're going to get back to the mentorship because that's super important. But can you take us through your moment, right?
Mhm.
That abyss moment in which you had to confront all these things that were as an individual, right, from your point of view. And I know that this is kind of like a vulnerable question to ask, but we talked about it before, right? And we're not you and I are not afraid to talk about our abyss.
Yeah.
So can you talk to me a little bit about that abyss from the standpoint of how did it feel, what led you to that, but then also what started to happen when you
Mhm.
started facing that shadow and transforming?
Yeah. That's, we're going to need like 3 episodes for that.
Give
Not
me the
any
short version, but again, this is
question. Trust me. I would say, for me, I was, look, when I was young
Mhm,
and I said, I, um, I was angry. I was really angry. I would lash out. Um, and this is in the late 70s, early 80s, right? When I was in my teens, and they didn't have things back then like understanding self harm
mhm,
or, you know, men's mental health, any of that kind of stuff. They really didn't know that. It was mostly suck it up, rub some dirt on it, be a man, that kind of thing. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a time and a place for that, but I needed a little more.
mhm,
And so for me, I kept looking to mama for it. It was all
mm,
about like, I wanted mama's comfort. I wanted mama's safety. I wanted mama to tell me it was going to be okay.
mm,
And then on the other flip side of that was I wanted mama to get away from me. I wanted out of this. This was, I don't know what's going on here. And, I was, like I said, very angry. And, I had gone away to college. I was very scared, timid, shy when I was in high school. I didn't speak much. I didn't hang out with people. I spent a lot of my time alone. Um, and I made the decision that when I got to college, people weren't going to know me. They didn't know who I was or how I was raised or any of that. So I'm going to become a different person when I get to college. And
mhm,
I went in and I was still very afraid. But the very first thing I did when I got there was there was a sign, a post, like a poster on the wall for a martial arts club. And I
mm,
said, "Oh, I've always wanted to do that, but my mom would never let me do it because she didn't understand it and she was afraid of it. Made her nervous. She thought it was going to break bones and do all that. And I went to this class
mm,
and I thought, oh my God, I love this. Like I just took to it naturally. And I did break bones and I did get bruised and I did bleed and I did all those things. And Omar, I love that. It just felt so natural to me to come home and have like black and blue and know that I was in the fight and all this kind of
mhm,
stuff. And that became a lifelong journey for me in the martial arts. And I had a coach that was, great guy. And he was the head trainer, the sensei.
sensei.
And he was terrific. And I thought, wow, there are men out there like this.
Mhm,
And so, I put aside the thoughts of ending this life and not giving a shit and said, well, let me move forward in this. And then I became a martial
mhm,
arts instructor and I found out I loved guiding other people.
mhm.
So I'm going to fast forward now from all that. Go
Before
ahead.
you do, let me ask you this question, right? Because
Sure.
again, this is called a soul's quest for a reason, and you hinted about your agreement, and when
Hmm.
you came into here, right? But
Yeah.
at that moment, you weren't conscious of that, right?
Recall correct. 100%.
Right. So tell me, um, because this is a hard question. It's like, how is it that at that time there was something in you that said, "I need this," right? And why did you listen to that voice instead of the other one?
That's a great question. And what I would say is, when I was on this side with like mama and all of that was going on, it didn't feel right.
Okay.
Right. So it's just funny enough, the main character in the book Lions Raised as Lambs is a lion cub named Lanthe. And I took the name Lanthe from the Greek, meaning to be wrong or out of place or not right.
Mhm.
That's how I felt when I was younger. When I got into the martial arts classes and started the path, it was like getting sucked in behind the wake of a boat, or like the
Mm.
jet stream of a plane. It was like,
Mhm.
this is it. This is natural. This feels right. This feels like what I'm supposed to be doing. And I will tell you that when I started this path, and I would say more so, the path was like this, a lot of up and down over the years.
Uh-huh.
And when I said fast forward a bunch of years, I found, self-discovery and Rob and that work. And that's when I was taught through that work, don't be a victim.
Mhm.
Take command of this. Rob was raised a cowboy and he was a Marine,
Hmm.
which is the diametric opposite of how I was raised.
Yeah.
But in looking at the hero's journey, you and I both know this. One of the key components that Joseph Campbell,
Mhm.
who developed the hero's journey, one of the
Mhm.
key things that he said was the meeting of the mentor. And usually
Yes.
in his stories and in myth and in modern myths like Star Wars, Harry Potter, the Matrix, all these things, is that mentor is a magical mentor,
Yes.
right? They have these, magical insights. Well, Rob became my mentor, and I would swear he's a magical mentor, right? He's one of the most enlightened people I know. He
Mhm.
does amazing, mind blowing stuff. And when I started training with him and really getting the feel for that right order masculinity, like that he was raised in, nothing else makes sense. Like,
Mm.
being a victim doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
Giving your power away doesn't make any sense. Everything comes from here. And so what I realized was all of that pain, all of that stress, all of that anxiety was coming from the fact that I wasn't living as my true self.
Mm.
I wasn't living my true masculinity, my true,
Mhm.
right order king, which includes the heart side. So let's
Mhm.
not I don't want to get confused and think like, oh, it's just this masculinity, is this barbarian, this warrior
No.
all the time.
No.
Well, there's that heart side, right? Which is
Yeah.
why my work is called Living Lionhearted, right?
Mhm.
Because it's both sides. And I learned that
Yeah.
from Rob, and I saw this in him. Like, he was a guy who could be an absolute beast of a man,
Mhm.
but then also be the most heartfelt, compassionate, could weep watching, a movie, like those kind of things. And I was like, oh my God,
Yeah. Yep.
it's okay to have both sides.
Yeah.
So for me, in talking about what we're talking about, I had chronic, you know, illnesses. I had stomach pains and digestive issues and migraines that I would get, a couple times a month, massive migraines and pain back in here and lower back stuff and all kinds of craziness. And it all stopped.
Mhm.
It made me realize that because I had gotten on the path and I was living my true self, I was no longer denying that warrior
Mhm.
side of me, that lion that was inside me, and also didn't see the heart side as being weak,
Yes.
saw it as being powerful. And I had this example to go by.
Mhm.
Well, I just went right for that. And that's when I knew that I had to do the same thing. That my
Correct.
journey is to help other men on this path. And so
Yeah.
that's what kind of got me here.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that because Joseph Campbell talks about mythology being the work of the body, right?
Mm,
We got
yeah.
a lot and the different energies of our bodies, right? And the beautiful thing that you mentioned was that love side,
Mhm,
which tends to be a feminine side,
mhm.
right? Oh, quote unquote, right? Let's because again, it's
Well,
not the way that we describe it, right? But the idea is that these components are aspects of ourselves that we need to get familiar with,
mhm,
right?
absolutely.
And it doesn't make us weak as men or as individuals as a whole to be able to see the opposites of what we see. Now, you mentioned something that is interesting, and I want to ask you about that. On
Mhm.
how is it? Um, you mentioned all the ailments that you have physically
Yeah.
from not working in alignment and not being your authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit more about that and the realizations that you had coming to the conclusion, wow, now that I'm living from here,
Mm-hmm.
this stuff just goes away. Tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about that, because most people think this as a theory or a
Yeah.
concept,
No. It's
right?
it's very real, and I see it in the people. Like I said, I do the Rob's work, the self-discovery work, and it almost like I didn't even realize it was happening.
Mm.
Like one day I was like, huh, I don't have the stomach issue. It's not
Mhm.
causing me a problem. I haven't had a migraine in 5 years. You know what I mean? Like it was that kind of thing. But it's interesting. They'll point out disease. If
Yeah.
you break it down, it's dis-ease.
Hmm.
So it's dis-ease. So it's that turmoil within ourselves that cause all of this. And, listen, I don't want to get all, woo-woo about it. But my firm belief after doing this work for this long is when you become aligned with yourself, when you're in
Mm.
integrity with yourself, and I want to get into that in a second,
Hmm.
when you're in integrity with yourself and in alignment, everything else just lines up. To
Hmm.
me, the disease, cancer, ailments, chronic inflammation, all those things are us just being locked up
Hmm.
in the stuff that's going on in our head. And it just locks us up and causes that stress. And when you become aligned with yourself, and I'll tell you how I did that in a
Hmm.
minute,
Yep.
I found that a lot of my stuff was peeling off. I just call it peeling off. That's what we call it in the work. It just peels out, right? And
Hmm.
it's the shadow. A lot of it's the shadow that you talked about at the very
Yep.
beginning, the shadow self that we have that's holding us back. And it's that exercise of peeling out the shadow, attacking the shadow, going deliberately after the shadow.
Hmm.
But I really want to get to the integrity thing real quick. So in our work, we have what we call the sacred 7 core values.
Hmm.
And guys that are listening, I would say to you, have good core values.
Yes.
Have really good core
Yep.
values that you can relate to. Now, these 7 are ours. So this
Hmm.
was done by a group of really good men with Rob's guidance. We sat in a room for like 2 days,
Mm.
whatever it was, looking at all of these values and pared it down and pared it down and pared it down and pared it down to these 7. And they're magical, man. I'm telling you,
Hmm.
you live from these, you're going to see incredible, incredible results in your life. But I don't want to, again, that's another episode entirely. So,
That's a lunch conversation.
yeah. So what I would say is the 7 are courage,
Hmm.
honesty, integrity, commitment, duty, honor, and love.
Mm.
And if you look at courage and love, they're the alpha and the omega. They wrap
Hmm.
the other, 5, and they are the warrior and the lover. They're the masculine and the feminine. They're the lion and the heart. You can look at them that way. But let's look at
Hmm.
the first 3, Omar, just courage, honesty, and integrity.
Correct. Yep.
Courage is first. Why would courage be first? I'm gonna put you on the spot for a second. Why do you think we put, because they're in a very deliberate order. Why would we put
Yep.
courage first?
I think that you need courage first to really confront what's inside of you,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I think primarily from the standpoint of understanding, arriving at that essence of who you are, that you're who you truly are. It takes courage to put away the social conditioning, so to speak, right? So to look into that, we need that strength, we need that courage to go out there to discover who we are. I think from that point of view, that's why I feel that courage is the most important one first.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I would say, without courage, can you move forward?
No.
Fear is going to keep you locked,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So we have a thing that Rob pointed out to me, and I believe it's in the book, but it's something that I never forgot, and I look at all the time. Courage is attention out.
Yeah.
That's what I need to go to. That's the fear I need to, conquer. That's
Hmm.
the challenge I need to overcome. Fear is attention collapsing in.
Yeah.
It's all on
Good way
me.
to
What
put it.
is this? What am I doing? Oh my God. So courage is out. So courage gets us moving.
Yeah.
You don't have courage, you're not going anywhere. So the rest of the others doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Right? So courage. Then you got honesty.
Yep.
When we look at honesty, it's first being ruthlessly honest with yourself
Yeah.
first. Because
Yes.
you cannot be honest with anyone out there
Yes.
until you're honest with you in here.
Yeah, it's interesting because this you in one of you made me think of something, because I do a lot of reflection after I listen to different people, and I was thinking about that idea
Mhm.
of being honest with yourself. Like our desires, our passions, the things that we want to do, and look at it from the point of view, why is this being done? Why am I doing this, right? And I was listening to Simon Sinek, right? And he has a very good question. You start with the why.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
after listening to honesty, I felt like that's the wrong question.
Mhm.
And the reason being is because I'm doing this. My why is to prove to everybody that I'm good enough. My why is to like show my mother or show my dad or show this that I am worthy enough. So I started looking at it from that angle. So like tell me more about that ruthless honesty with
So,
ourselves.
yeah. So what you just said was a great awareness, Omar. Really great awareness, and that is that outer referral, right?
Hmm.
My why is ego based.
Hmm.
I want them to like me. I want them to tell me I'm valuable. I want them to tell me I'm a good man. I want them to tell me I'm great in bed. I want them to tell me that I'm valuable. Whatever it is,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yep,
That's my why.
yeah,
So what I would say to Simon Sinek is, yes, I understand the why, but the why's got to be purpose.
yeah,
The other stuff, the ego stuff, is agenda, right?
yes.
It's like running. So I always say, if you look at agenda versus purpose,
Hmm.
agenda is what value can I get from you? What can I take from you?
Hmm.
So, like people on social media, it's all agenda, right? What are they looking for on social media, right? Likes, comments, followers, right? To feed that ego.
Yes, yep.
Purpose is what value can I deliver to you?
Hmm.
So agenda is taking value, purpose is delivering value. And I would say if you're looking at your why, it better be purposeful,
Yes.
right? Look at the purpose. So in looking at the honesty, we need to be just ruthlessly honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
When you have the courage to be ruthlessly honest with yourself, that'll lead you to being in integrity.
Hmm.
Integrity being you're the same man in public as you are in private. You got nothing to hide. You're not being two-faced. You're not saying like, I'm on here, Omar, this is awesome. And then I get off and I go and I tell my buddies, man, that was dumb, man. Omar didn't know what he was doing. That's just stupid. No, integrity would me be saying, Omar, listen, here's what I think you need to do to make this
Yes.
right. Exactly. So
Yeah.
we need to do that with ourselves first, right? A
Hmm.
lot of people are real happy to tell you what you need to do.
Yeah.
You need to tell yourself. So courage and the courage to be ruthlessly honest leads to integrity. Rob asked me a question one day, and this is a roundabout way of getting back to your question of when did you make that turn? And this is
Hmm.
what it was for me. So Rob, like I said, can be an absolute beast of a man.
Hmm.
And I would tell you guys out there that are listening, if you have a mentor who's a nice guy and who's always telling you what you want to hear and doesn't put his boot in your ass when you need it and doesn't draw his sword and cut you to shreds, you got the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Because he's just being a buddy. You need a guy who's a
Hmm.
guide and a guardian. And Rob will be a guardian. And it is the most difficult job in the world because you've got
Hmm.
to just be ruthless with the person you love
Hmm.
because they're doing something stupid.
Yeah.
So one of the things he said to me, and this was during an uncomfortable conversation about where I was going in my life. This is several years ago. Where I was going in my life, I was being a dipshit in certain areas. I was being unaware in other areas. I wasn't really using the tools that he gave me properly. It was kind
Hmm.
of like dipping a toe in and out.
Yeah. Wishy-washy type stuff,
Yeah,
right?
like I'll use it when it suits me, but then I'll go back and be a dumbass
Yeah.
when I'm lazy, right? So I
Hmm.
was doing a lot of that, and he had to tear into me a little bit. And one of the things he said to me that I never forgot was he said, "Eric, where are you bullshitting yourself?"
Mm.
And I went, "Oh my God." Because you could always say, "Oh, I'm being honest with myself. I'm
Uh-huh.
just going to be honest with myself." All right. So here's some honesty. I don't like this, or I'm not making as much money as I should, or my relationships aren't as good as I want them. That wasn't being ruthlessly honest with myself.
No.
Looking at where I was bullshitting myself.
Yeah.
Where am I deluding myself into thinking things are good when they're not? And one of the things I found, Omar, and this is where the turning point came for me, I was looking at a lot of my motivation, right? A lot of my agenda.
Hmm.
And a lot of it was to make people like me.
Mm.
That was a big thing for me. Like growing up, like I said, I was a very quiet, shy kid, but I was also very small and very thin.
Yeah.
I didn't have like the power to, defend myself. I was afraid a lot. So my strategy was to make the bigger, tougher guys like me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, Eric, he's funny. He's this. I'm not going to
Hmm.
punch him in the face. He's
Hmm.
And it was a good strategy. It got me through, growing up in a fairly tough neighborhood,
Yep.
unscathed. And
Mostly.
but I was looking at, where do I want to make people like me?
Yeah.
And what I realized is, I don't really like people.
Mm.
People annoy me, and I don't really, appreciate them, and I'm jealous of them a lot, and I don't like some of the things they do, and a lot of them, the victim thing and all of this, and I really was like, okay, that's where I'm bullshitting myself. I like people, but I will tell you, Omar, one of the things Rob would guide me to do, he would go deeper, go deep,
Yes.
go deeper.
Yeah.
I'm hearing his voice in my head, and I'm like, I don't like people.
Yeah.
And I woke up. I went to sleep one night, and I was, contemplating that, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was like, oh shit.
Mm.
It's not that I don't like people. It's not that I hate people. I hate myself.
Yeah.
I hate me. I really don't like me. I
Mm.
don't like that pussy little victim that I was all those years. I don't like how scared and fearful I am. I don't like being two-faced and,
Mhm.
trying to get people to like me when I don't even like myself. That was the biggest illusion.
Mhm.
Outer referral, trying to get them to validate me when
Yeah.
I couldn't validate me. And I was like, shit, I hate myself.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, it was at that moment when I was like, you know what? I'm actually okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay with hating myself for right now.
Yeah, let me ask you this, and I'm sorry to interrupt because you
No, go
what
ahead.
you're describing right now, right? And again, I understand you're answering the question about the abyss, right? And you're getting ready now to come out, right?
Mhm.
Explain to the listeners and men and whoever, people in general,
Yeah.
the importance of that solitude.
Oh, yeah.
Right, because
Oh,
you mentioned that you had the mentor kicked you. He was honest, he was brutally honest, right? And it's interesting. I was having a conversation with Dorian Bridges from Listen School of the Arts here locally, and we were talking about the difference between hurt and pain, right? A mentor hurts you so that you'll become honest,
mhm,
right? But in that solitude, which is the work, which is the real work,
mhm,
talk to the audience about the importance of taking that courageous action to be brutally honest in
mhm.
that solitude. Why is that important?
Well, because it blocks out everything else, right? If you're not, I forget who it was, and someone will know this who's listening, but I think they said it was Nietzsche or one of these big, or Sartre, one of the big philosophers
Mhm.
said, hell isn't all, like fire and flame and
Mm,
brimstone and devils and demons. And it is spending time alone,
mm,
solitude for the rest of
yes.
eternity, just you and you.
Yep.
And in our work, it is only you and you. And you have to be okay with solitude. What the weird thing is like, you know what, Omar, I don't listen to the radio in the car anymore.
Yeah.
I'll take
Neither do
hour
I.
and a half trips, and I'm like, I can't listen to the radio. I just want to be quiet.
Yes.
And it's because I value and I just adore that silence so much. And it's so
Uh-huh.
important. And, Rob, when he was putting his work together, he spent a couple of years out on an island, literally out on an island in solitude. And
Mhm.
I like to go solo camping,
Mm.
and be out in the woods in nature. I would say,
Yeah.
if you're going to do this, nature is a place to go do it.
Perfect. Yep.
And just go be quiet. And, at first, monkey mind will take over. This will be racing. And then you'll find
Mhm.
after a while, it just kind of goes away.
Yeah.
And one of the things it teaches is for you to be alone with your thoughts. It allows you to go internally and introspective. It gets out the noise of other people telling you what you should do, and you should be doing this, and hey, what's going on, and hey, let's watch this TV show, and hey,
Yes.
let's. It erases all of that, and you can get, more into who you are, more into your heart.
Hmm.
You get out of this and you come into this.
Yes.
And the solitude is there, and the nature is so important in that,
Mhm.
especially for men. Get out in nature, go sit under a tree, or get out on a boat on a lake, or
Yeah.
go for a hike, and
Go
just
to a
be
park.
quiet. Put the phone away, get the headphones off, and just be silent.
Yeah.
Listen to the sounds of nature. We have a thing, we do a meditation, we call it lion stalking in my work. And it's pretending you're a lion out in nature, you're stalking. So you're using all your senses:
Yeah.
sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. What's going on around me? If I hear a bird, can I find it? Squirrels, can I see them? And you
Mm.
start to feel yourself more connecting to nature. And this is the important thing, especially for men. we become more independent.
Yes.
And that is critical.
Mm-hmm.
Men are me, women are we.
Yes.
Women tend to congregate in groups and they like to do that. It's great. It's who they are. Men, we like to be independent.
Yes.
We don't want to rely on anybody else, right? This was Ralph Waldo Emerson and others.
Self-reliance. Mm-hmm.
Love, self-reliance. Get out there and be your own man. Be independent. And that scares the hell out of society. They don't
It
want
does.
independent men, which is why they're trying to keep us small, keep us down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Emerson's great quote that I actually start my book off with is,
Yeah.
societies everywhere are in conspiracy against the masculinity of every one of its members.
Yes.
Doesn't want us independent, doesn't want us self-reliant,
No.
it wants us dependent. So
Mm-hmm.
that solitude teaches you to be alone, teaches
Yeah.
you to be in your heart, drown out everything else. And it's so critical. And
Yeah.
we don't do it enough. So I'll tell guys, if you're listening, get in your car, go drive to a park, nature, sit in your
Mm-hmm.
backyard. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
Spend some time alone in silence and just let this thing start to speak to you.
Absolutely. The questions actually are organically because you're following the whole process of the hero, because now we're actually in the return, right?
Yeah.
Returning with the elixir, right?
Mhm.
Because there's something that happens, and I want you to talk about now that returning to society, right? Because once you're in solitude, once you find that peace, that's when you start discovering creativity.
Mhm.
This is from here you start creating, you
Mhm.
start really living and doing things that benefit society as a whole, right? But
Sure.
without that separation, you can do that. So now that we're getting towards the end of our conversation, I want to talk about your return, right?
Sure.
Your return in things of, this is what I've learned about myself.
Mhm.
This is what I'm doing
Mhm.
to contribute to the whole, because again, there's schools of thought and spirituality and psychology that want you to stay isolated,
Mhm.
but that's not what we're
Go sit on
supposed
the
to do.
mountaintop and meditate for the rest of your life. Now that you've got it, go do that.
Exactly.
Right?
And
Sure.
that's not life, right? That's I say the thing, life is not whatever is static in life, in nature, will
Mhm.
die, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about your coming back, your
Sure.
returning, your hero's return,
Yeah.
what you've learned, what you are doing. I want you to take the last part of the session to tell us about everything that's going on with you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you can't get into that without discussing the what I call the 4 foundational archetypes,
Mhm.
right? And this is what we do in the work. This is where we get the lion-hearted, whether it's leadership, fatherhood,
Yes.
personal, whatever. The 4 foundational archetypes are the warrior, the lover, the king, and the hero.
Yes.
Now, if you look at the hero's journey and going in, the warrior has to lead, right? Because it comes first. You can't go into the abyss, into the wilderness, take on challenges, face your fears, develop
Mhm.
courage without warrior.
Yeah, the warrior is the embodiment of courage. Uh-huh.
Exactly. So there are warrior traits, right? That courage
Mhm.
and leadership and decision is warrior, and exploration and adventure and boldness and risk taking. All of that comes in, and so I had to learn that, right? I had to get through that, and that's fairly easy to teach men.
Yeah.
Be a warrior. It's innate in us. Like I said, I went to the martial arts school, banging around, punching, getting kicked. Awesome.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So that's our warrior. We get into the abyss, right? Into that darkness.
Mhm.
If you look at Campbell's journey, there's a beautiful thing in there. It's called the gift of the goddess.
Yes.
Now, in myths, it could be finding true love.
Mhm.
It could be an actual gift, like
Mhm.
creativity, beauty, art.
Excalibur in King Arthur, it was Excalibur from the Lady in the Water.
Lady of the Lake gave him
Yes.
Excalibur, and that's what helped him. And around that, it's finding your heart,
Yes.
right? It is that other side of us. So now you have the
Uh-huh.
warrior, and you find your lover archetype, your heart, which is the gift of the goddess,
Uh-huh.
right? Now, so when I say warrior and lover, I can say warrior lover, I could say lion heart, and I could say masculine feminine.
Mhm.
The reason why I don't use masculine feminine is because it gets people all up in a tizzy, right?
Mhm.
When I say masculine feminine, I do not mean male, female, boy, girl, man, woman. We all have masculine and feminine in us. We would die
Yes.
without it. We have to.
We have to.
Okay? So the hero going on the journey discovers a warrior, taps in, courage, all of that, has to get the gift of the goddess, the heart side. And that lover side of us, that heart side of us, is a lot of the things you were just talking about. So it's wisdom, number one. So,
Uh-huh.
I always thought the lover side was the weak side. Tell me if any of these things sound weak to you. Wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
creativity,
Mm-hmm.
generosity, trust, inspiration, right? Playfulness, abundance,
Yep.
beauty.
Yep.
All of those things are the heart. And don't we need those to be a well-rounded human being? I mean,
Correct.
right? So now you get the gift of the goddess, and now you come out. And now you return as the king and the hero.
Mm-hmm.
So the king archetype is the man who has the warrior and the lover, his Lionheart, integrated within himself.
Yes.
This is what I tell all men. And I didn't know this. And this is when you say, like, how did you come back from your abyss? It was, seeing a man like Rob, who was just the most masculine guy I ever met in my life, right? Cowboy,
Mm-hmm.
Marine, all these things, just have this insanely embraced heart side,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just an incredible heart side. And I was like, wow. And it didn't make me think any less of him. It actually made me think more of him. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
my God, what a, king, what a well-rounded. And so when I learned the archetypes, from him and putting this together in my work, the king is the man who has both inside.
Yeah.
And now you can lead your kingdom from being both the warrior and the lover.
Mm-hmm.
And then the hero is the one who elevates above just the king, right? There's a great line in the movie Aquaman. I don't know if you've seen it with Jason Momoa.
You were saying it the other day.
Yeah,
So, well,
yeah,
it's your quote.
he said, I don't want to be king. They were going to make him king of Atlantis. He goes, I don't want to be king.
Mm-hmm.
And his mother, who was the queen of Atlantis and who was exiled, said, well, you're going to be greater than a king. And he's like, what could be greater than a king? And she said, a hero. Because a king fights for his people, but a hero fights for everyone.
Mm.
So elevating yourself to hero, once you've been a king and you've got your kingdom going and you got all that straight, hero is your next step in the journey. And that is
Yes.
for everyone. So for me, and saying all that, and then in my journey, was the more I started to step into king, right? And when I say the more I was going to step into it, it's a journey, not a destination, right? This hero's
Yes.
journey is, it's continual, right? You don't get there and then everything's fine. You're going to continually have challenges. You're going to tap
Mm-hmm.
more into your heart.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get another challenge. You're going to tap more into your courage, and then you're going to tap more into your, so it's going around and around. So the more I was stepping into king and elevating my king and dipping into hero, the more I found that my purpose, so not my why, but my purpose
Yes.
was, there are millions of men out there who grew up like I did. There are
Yes.
millions of men out there who are living on their parents' couch and smoking pot and playing video games, have no desire to get a job and are defeated and have
Mm-hmm.
no relationship and no ambition, no drive. That's been like pushed out of us, right?
Yeah.
My purpose and what I'm passionate about is helping get men on this path,
Mm-hmm.
right? And letting them know there are good men that are out there like you, like other men who do this work, like the men that are in, the self-discovery community who are doing, the
Mm-hmm.
work and putting in the time and facing their shadow and facing their shit and coming out of it and wanting to guide these young men. And that's really what it was for me. I came out
Yeah.
of this and went, other people need to know how to do this.
Yeah.
Right?
A question on this, because this is one of the things that sometimes, because of the nature of how people are, it gets convoluted, right?
Hmm.
Because one of my beliefs is that we are a point of expression, right?
Okay.
Right, because I know that when we've in our conversations and in what I'm seeing you doing, your message resonates with women, and it resonates with a lot of people. But your point of expression and your focus is to work primarily with men,
Mm-hmm.
right? Can you talk about the importance of understanding that point of expression, that point that this is the focus that I have, and that I'm okay with that? I don't have to do this entire appeal to everyone.
Sure.
right? Because we get confused on that. And I think this is when the hero goes wrong, when
Yeah.
they're trying to impose too much to everybody, right? That's when the hero becomes the villain. So tell me about the importance of your point of expression, where you pick, what you choose, and the importance to continue to be a hero from that point.
Yeah. Listen, it's very simple. I learned this years ago. I was a sales copywriter. And one of the things, I forget who it was, but one of the well-known copywriters said, if you're trying to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one.
Yes.
Can't be done.
Hmm.
Right. And the analogy that I use is a driving manual. Now, so if I said to you, Omar, if I had you write a driving manual for me, what would you include in it? What would be the important points to include in a driving manual?
Hmm.
What would you say? Give me a
I
couple.
mean, I would say waiting to make sure people go by. So respecting the lights, making sure we know which side of the road we're going,
Yeah, merging, yielding,
merging, yielding.
parking,
Mhm.
gas, brake, those are the things.
Yeah.
But if I said to you, now you're writing a driving manual for race car drivers,
Mm.
would any of that be relevant?
I mean, the only a few things, but not all of it. Like maybe braking when you see something, to make sure you're safe. But no, completely different
Be different.
scenario.
What if it was for senior citizens? Would you write a different manual if it was for senior citizens?
Absolutely.
Sure. So
Yeah.
the thing is, the way you speak and the way that you approach it is going to depend on who you're speaking to, your audience,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So for me, what's most natural and what's comes out of me is just speaking to men who are like me, right? So, if you were raised like Rob was raised on a cattle ranch and going through the Marines, we've had a different experience.
Hmm.
But if you were raised by a single mom, or you were raised to deny your masculinity, or you're, confused, anxious, those kind of things, I can speak to you.
Yeah.
So that's why I go to men. And listen, I've had women come to me. A lot of times they say, "Well, you work with men, so you must hate women."
Nah, yes, exactly.
I
Those kind
love
of
women.
conclusions.
They're
Yeah.
amazing. Women are phenomenal. I mean, very
Hmm.
powerful women. There's nothing like it. But I didn't have that experience. I don't know how to speak to a woman on how she grows up. This is why I get so pissed off. And this is something I'm passionate about when I see, like, I've been introduced to a couple of different women who are men's coaches. Like,
Mm.
no, no, no. You can't coach men. The only person who can create a king and guide a man to king is another king.
Hmm.
You haven't taken the journey. You only know what you think you know. So you can't speak to all the things that are going on with men. I said in
Yep.
my first book that it was a dating book for men. I said taking dating advice for men. I'm sorry. I'm going to start again. Taking dating advice from women is like taking hunting advice from deer.
Yeah.
They only know what they know, right?
Yeah.
So I love women. They're amazing. They're fantastic. But I don't train women and guide women because I haven't taken their journey.
Yes.
I don't
Yep.
know that journey. So I know this journey. This is
Hmm.
where I'm in. This is my lane and I'm staying in it.
Yep.
So that's where I kind of get that from.
Yeah. And again, I bring that up because we have a tendency to, because someone is good at one certain area, we begin to demonize that and change in that. And the point of what we do is that you have to find, just like in the hero's journey,
Mhm.
you have to find your point of expression,
Right.
your area, and this is kind of like what you embodied, right? So now now that we're getting to the conclusion of all this, right,
Sure.
what do you do now? Like, again, you
Oh,
returned, you have all this understanding. Share with the audience, like, what do you do, where do they find you, how do they connect to you?
yeah.
I know where to find you.
Yeah. So my main thing right now is I have a couple of things. First of all, obviously, I'm an author. Been an
Mhm.
author for a long time. I was a journalist most of my career. I wrote for a lot of big publications, and that translated into writing books. So my latest book is Lions Raised as Lambs. I highly recommend it. Men really seem to connect with it and love it. It is the story of Rob and I, our mentorship, and
Mhm.
my growth from little Lanthe, the terrified little lion cub, into a king.
Okay.
And you can find that on Amazon. You can also go to lionsraiseslambs.com
Mhm.
and get information there. So I would say definitely read that. It's a quick
Mhm.
read, and I wouldn't recommend it. It's my book, but I'm recommending it because I see the response other men get from it.
Mm-hmm.
From that, we have the Lionheart Challenge, and you can get there at thelionheartchallenge.com.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, it's a 30-day virtual challenge. It's everything that I laid out here in one challenge a day. It's your personal hero's journey. Do it on your own time. You can do it in solitude, or we have a community, an online community. You can jump in there and talk to the guys. But you do this, and I can't tell you some of the responses I've gotten from men on the change in just a couple of weeks, let alone the 30 days. So that's the lionheartchallenge.com. And then when you finish the Lionheart Challenge, you get invited into what I have. It's called the Bold Men Brotherhood. This is a group of men. We meet every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. And we take that Lionheart Challenge and all these concepts, and we discuss different topics and get men to tap more into their warrior, into their lover, into their king, and really become the best father, the best husband, the best man, the best leader that they can be.
Yes.
And that's invitation only. And then, always reach out to me on all the social medias. I'm the only Eric Rogell on all the social media platforms. So it's easy to find me.
I've looked, and it's only you. Eric
Rogell, you'll find me. Reach out. Have a conversation, man. I love having conversations with men, especially if you got questions or you have a similar experience to mine, no matter what age you are. Let's talk. But, the book and the Lionheart Challenge, I would say, are the best ways to really get a feel for what it is we're talking about, and just jump onto your own journey, man. Just take that first step. Have the courage. Take that first step.
Absolutely. And I will provide all the links in the description for this video. So please feel free to reach out. Eric, I want to thank you so much, man. I know we've been working closely in the last few months, but I want to continue our conversations as we always will. I appreciate what you've done. I appreciate taking your time today to be here with us and sharing. So thank you so much for your time, Eric.
Absolutely, man. Listen, it has been an honor to be here and have this conversation. I'm passionate about this, what I love talking about. So giving me the opportunity to kind of indoctrinate people that are listening, your listeners, into some of this stuff. I just, there's no better way I could feel spending an hour.
Thank you for joining another transformational conversation on the ASQ podcast. Don't forget to check out Eric's Lionheart Challenge by clicking the link below, and to pick up his latest book, Lions Raised as Lambs. Remember to join the movement. Live authentically, lead with purpose. Until next time.